Thank you very much. So the motto of TED is ideas worth spreading, but I think so far this morning we've really heard stories worth hearing as well. And my talk is going to be a little different. The data is going to be telling the story in effect, and I'm just going to act as the curator of the stories of the data. So about 6 or 7 years ago, I set up basically just a blog called Mapping London, because I'm a bit of a map nerd really and a data nerd. And I'm based here in London, lucky enough to be based in the centre of London, surrounded by maps and data of the city. And over the years, we've basically just collected, I think, 350 different maps now of London. And we create them on this blog, we talk about them, we categorise them into these 7 categories you can see here. You'll notice that tube is one of the categories there, and as you may all know, the tube map of London is perhaps the most famous map of London of all, and every time we feature a tube map, we get a lot of interest and activity. So we continue to add a map every few days, and it's really an honour, and it's amazing to be in a position in the city where so much data is being created, so many people are drawing representations of the city that they live in or know about, and we're able to curate them in this blog. But I'm going to start with a very old map, actually. This is a map from the late 1800s. It's a map of around here. The thing that really strikes me about this map is the detail is amazing, considering it's such an old map. It's showing where we are right now, roughly in the middle of this map in Somerset House. A few interesting details from this map. Things change. Aldwych is not there at all, but it's just the Strand is a straight road. There's certain things which still exist. PH is pubs, many pubs around here. But there's a few things which have disappeared. So urinal behind the church. There's many urinals in this part of London, I guess because of all the people going to pubs. But those have largely disappeared now, or being turned into more pubs these days. It seems to be the trend for these old Victorian urinals. It's a lovely old map, and I'm going to come back to a map of this particular area at the end of my talk. So, to understand why London has these huge numbers of maps being created, why London is such an exciting place to study, to visualise, and to map, we have to think of London's equation, and this is what drives the energy of the activity in London. And it is an equation of population. And there's three kinds of population change in London. Natural population change. Every day, on average, and this is based on data for the last 18 months or so, on average 352 people are born in London. Now London is, like most large cities, a predominantly young city, and people traditionally move out of London. So the death rate in London is a lot lower than the birth rate in London. Today, probably around 133 people will die in London, but that means that every day in London, the natural population increase is about 219, 220. So there's nearly 3 times as many people being born in London that are dying in London. But of course, that's not just the story of London's population. There's also migration as well. And there's 2 forms of migration. Domestic migration. Every day, 542 people on average, and obviously this fluctuates through the year with certain times of year, people moving from universities to start careers in London. But on average, every day, 542 extra people move to London. But that's balanced by 797 people every day leaving London to go to other parts of the UK. And that's because, as I say, London is a young city. Many people come to London to start their career, but then as they grow old and maybe start a family or just have other plans, they'll leave London and move to other parts of the UK. So every day, 255 people on average, on balance, leave London, and that's more than the natural population increase in London. So London, with respect to the UK, is a city that's declining. But of course, there's another major factor, and that's international migration. And every day, 604 people move to London from other parts of the world, on average. And that's balanced by 259 people leaving London to travel to other places in the world on long-term migration or permanently. So overall, that's 345 people moving from outside the UK into London, the balance. And if you add all those together, then we have 309 people. London's population is increasing every day by around 309, 310 or so people. And obviously, it fluctuates from day to day, but that is the daily average. So that's that is an incredible increase. If you think about it, your average tube train in London at crush capacity fits around 900 people. So that means every 3 days, we basically fill up a full tube train of people who are moving to London. Now, the story is a little bit more complicated about not everybody travels by tube, but if you're always wondering why the tubes never seem to be less busy, that's a major reason. So that is the most recent official estimate of population in London, 8.7 million people, 8.78 million people. Mid-2016 is the most recent data, and that's the data which those previous numbers were based on. So if we simply take that 309 people and we add it to the population back then, and bear in mind that things do fluctuate from time to time, today, this morning, we probably have 8.97 million people. Maybe. As I say, as you may have heard recently, there's been various political events and other things which mean that London's population is fluctuating. Perhaps it's slowing down the increase, but it's certainly increasing. And if we take that current trend, when are we going to get to 9 million people, which is more than we've ever had in London? London's previous high was 1940, was just before the Second World War, when it was 8.5 million, so we're already above that. When are we going to hit this magic number of 9 million? Well, maybe on the 19th of May, which is not very long from now, so who knows? Certainly by midsummer, we could well be hitting 9 million people, which is an amazing number of people, considering that London is really not that large. You can get out of London on a train in 10, 15 minutes. So where are those people living in London? Well, this is an amazing map created by a friend of mine, Duncan Smith, at CASA, and it basically is a hexagonal population map of southeast England. London is obviously that bit in the middle. You can see that London is fairly uniform in terms of its population density, except for the middle, the very heart of London, of course. Not that many people actually live here. We often come to work in the centre of London, but we're not actually based there. But if I flip back to the working population, then you can see this incredible spike, which happens every weekday when you have millions and millions of people moving into the centre of the city from outside. And how do we get there? Well, of course, various forms of transport. And you can see this is a line map of the daily journeys into London from the southeast of England. You can see Brighton is at the bottom there. There's very good links from Brighton to London. You can get to London in less than an hour. From the east, London is a very, very popular place. There are a few other towns and cities surrounding London that hold their own in terms of their employment. Oxford is there on the left. There's not much commuting from Oxford to London simply because Oxford has a well-established working community. Here's an animation of oyster tap-ins. It's a little old, this animation, but it really goes to show the amount of activity that happens. It's at 10-minute slices through a typical working day. Green is people leaving the system. Red is people going into the tube system. And as you might expect, there's all those people going in and then appearing in the centre of London. And then in the afternoon, you just have people moving around in general. And then as we approach the evening rush hour, you'll see again huge numbers of people going into the system and just coming out all directions of London. Apart from the funny section to the southeast, Bromley, which is just south of Bromley, which is relatively unpopulated still. But it's just amazing to see this sort of daily flow of movement. And you can see the numbers just going up there. We had 6 million tap-ins on the Oyster by midnight. We also have information on the actual routes that people take themselves. And this is a visualization I called tube heartbeat, because it's like this, every day you have this pulse in, this pulse out again on each day. And I've highlighted a particular tube station here, Covent Garden, which has at least 3 or 4 rush hours. So you have the morning, people going into work. Then you have the people arriving in the centre to do shopping and other sort of central London activity. Then you have the people leaving. And then you have a late night spike, of course, and that's the West End. Huge numbers of people use the tube network after going out to see a theatre show. And so it basically has its bonus rush hour at about 11 o'clock at night. If you always got that sensation that everybody seems to be approaching the same place in central London during the morning rush hour, then if you are at Piccadilly Circus and you're right, these arrows are basically showing the biggest flow during the morning rush hour, and all the lines seem to converge on Piccadilly Circus, so it's not a particularly fun place to be at 9 o'clock in the morning if you're trying to go in the other direction. Now, this is sort of a tube map if you squint carefully. Some of these shapes may be familiar, but this is actually, if you ever wanted to visit all the tube stations in a single day, this, which people have done, it is known as the Tube Challenge, then this is actually a route that you can do. So you start at Chesham, which is northwest of London, at I think it's 6:30 in the morning, and you end up at Heathrow Terminal 5 at 11:30 p.m. in the evening, having spent, it's got to be 17, 18 hours on the tube, which is not very much fun, but it's quite a challenge. You're not entirely on the tube. You can see there's some links there where you basically have to leave the tube and walk or maybe run to another tube stop. Some of these are a couple of miles, so it's an athletic activity to do for a particular day. Now you're wondering, how do I know this route? How do I know that this is a particular route that you can do the Tube Challenge in 18 hours? And here's how. If you've been to a tube station recently, you may have noticed these sorts of symbols. There's one of these in almost every single tube station in London, and it's an artwork created by an artist called Mark Wallinger for a project called Art on the Underground, and the project is called Labyrinth. And as well as just being a nice little thing where you can maybe wait for 90 seconds or so for the next tube train, you can try and track your way through the maze to get to the middle from the starting point, which is an X. But the thing on the right, which looks like your typical artist's mark saying, this is edition number 103 of 270. Actually, it's a sequential number of the order of the stations that are visited. So this particular station is 103rd on that sequence. And if you go to all the tube stations, or you go online, it's probably easier, and find the number associated with each tube station, you can basically recreate that map. And that is exactly what my friend and colleague, Dr. James Chester, who is a co-author of Mapping London, did in order to create this map. So that's the secret. If you want to visit every tube station a day, then that is the sequence that you need to do. But of course, it's not just a tube in London. London's transport systems are expanding. We've got Crossrail launching at the end of the year, which will provide very, very high capacity routes into the centre of London from outside. But also Thameslink is expanding as well. There's a new route from Cambridge right through London down to Brighton, which is now currently testing and is going to launch in May. So you don't need to be in London to experience to London. You have high frequency transport from well outside the city. This was captured earlier on this morning. This is amazing. TfL provide all their traffic camera data available to anyone who wants it to create anything you like with it. It's 10-second clips, which are updated every 5 minutes. This was, as I say, just a couple of hours ago when I was putting this together. Now, Sunday morning traffic isn't that exciting. It's just a few buses and taxis wandering around. But certainly at 9 o'clock in the morning or during a tube strike or some other major event, then having this gives you a really good sort of indication of how London is currently moving. And when I say sort of major event, of course, the recent major event for London was our snow days we had last week. And this is a quick snapshot. Again, the one in the middle is just outside this building. And it's pretty amazing watching the snow coming down, various vans trying to do U-turns and buses going slow. And everything seemed to be moving this time. And certainly it worked out better than previous times we've had snow days. This again I captured just a short while ago. This is the live information that TfL provides on all the buses and all the tubes. If you're sitting at a bus stop, you can see the next bus is in 1 minute or 2 minutes. The actual data is provided to the second. They just round it to the minute because, of course, traffic lights can cause delays. And so this is a live view of the bus stop outside this building and also Waterloo Station. So it's not live as a couple of hours ago, but it is live on a website. And you can basically see all these tiny little adjustments that are made automatically. So the tube, we think, oh, actually the tube's going slightly slow. Actually, no, that tube's slightly faster, so it's probably going to get there in 12 seconds. And that bus is due. We haven't heard of it for 93 seconds, but it's almost certainly on its way. And even on a Sunday morning, so this was a couple of hours ago, if you want to get a bus from here, there's plenty of options. And then there's bikes as well. And this is the Santander Cycles, the bike share system that we have in central London. And this is a snapshot of where the bikes are. So red, that's where the bikes are. Yellow, empty stands. And you see this pattern day in, day out in the evening before the beginning of the morning rush hour. All the bikes are on the edge. There's almost no bikes at all in the centre. And then 9:30, all the bikes move in. It's this incredible sort of flow of thousands and thousands of bikes all converging on the central London area. Journey information is available for these, so you can create visualizations of where we think the bikes are going. The bikes don't have trackers, but we know where they started and they ended, and we know where the infrastructure is. And this is a rough estimate of where those journeys happen in London, Hyde Park being very popular because, of course, it's traffic-free. It's not just Santander Cycles these days. There's various other bike share companies starting to appear. You may have noticed these yellow or orange or green bikes, depending on which part of London you're in. If you're based in London, they're appearing in other UK cities and actually other cities around the world as well. So I've basically just pulled this map together showing where they currently are. But it's quite an interesting time to be looking at bike share systems in London, because tomorrow, for instance, there's going to be a big expansion, and probably in the next few weeks, going to be several other large expansions as well. So it's a different way of moving around London. It means you don't have to rely on getting a bus or on the cramped tube. You don't also have to worry about maintaining your own bike. You can just get around in these different ways. And that's what it looks like in the centre of London. 3 different systems all competing for you to go on them. Moving away from London transport in general to other forms of movement, and this is telephone conversations. The researchers here looked at landline calls between different parts of the UK and basically drew lines to show where the major flows are. And London being London, well connected to the rest of the city, you can see yellow lines from London leaping up to Manchester, Edinburgh, Glasgow, and out towards Bristol. The fascinating thing I find with this map is not London, it's actually other parts. Wales, for instance, South Wales and North Wales, they really don't talk to each other. Perhaps it's a language barrier because Welsh is more commonly spoken in the north part of Wales, but South Wales is more connected, and it is mainly an infrastructure issue, to Bristol and the west of England, and the north of Wales is more connected to Liverpool than it is to the other half, whereas Scotland is well connected to itself. Moving away from digital networks to very sort of physical networks, this map is a surprisingly hard map to find. It's the sewer map of London. This one's from the 1950s, and I snapped a photograph like this one on a tour of Abbey Mills, which is this amazing Victoria sort of cathedral of sewage, they call it. It doesn't sound much fun to visit, but it is an incredible place in terms of Victorian architecture. And on the wall, they have this map. But it's almost impossible to find this map. And I actually got an inquiry from the Garden Bridge, which of course is now not going to get built, but I got an inquiry from engineers there saying, we don't know where the pipes are. Your map is our best source we can find of these pipes. Could you let us know where you got this map? Could we get more information about it? So it's amazing to see this network that runs underneath the streets and does often follow the streets. And finally, I'm going to finish on a map of the mappers. This is a map of the people who create the map, or create OpenStreetMap in this case. This is every road in London on OpenStreetMap, coloured by who mapped it. And in the early days of OpenStreetMap, it was all about walking the streets with a GPS. These days, where there's many more data sets available, but it's amazing to see certain people concentrating on certain areas. Traditionally on OpenStreetMap, you start by mapping your own area because you want it to be nice, and then you'll move to other areas. And it's just amazing to see there's a good 200, maybe 200 people involved in the creation of this map. And just going back to that very first map I showed you of Somerset House at the beginning of my talk, this is again the OpenStreetMap of Somerset House and the local area, again coloured by who did the mapping. And ultimately, you need somebody to create the map in the first place, and it's really nice to be able to see the data about the mappers, not just the map itself. So that was a quick talk about maps.